Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growley Leather. So visit growleyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors. This is the Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Brian Gill. And we're honored today to be joined by Geoff Moore, singer-songwriter. He traveled for many years with as Geoff Moore in the Distance. His music, sharing his music, also advocating for kids in underdeveloped countries and organizations like Compassion International and Show Hope, an organization founded by Curtis Chapman and his wife. His music certainly encouraged me and inspired me as a musician, but something else that he's doing and inspires me and us here at the Storied Outdoors. He's the co-founder of Fellowship Adventures, founded in 2014, focusing on serving those who serve others by offering opportunities to experience hunting and fishing and fellowship on various adventure expeditions. So, man, welcome to the show, Geoff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be with you. It's funny, sir, for so many years in my music career, I had to, tread lightly with the hunting and fishing part of my life because you never knew who you were talking to or where it was going. So good to be among friends. Yeah.
You getting emails from PETA? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, it's amazing, right?
Man, if you're not watching the YouTube version of this, there's a massive mount behind Geoff. Geoff, what is that? Is that a caribou?
That is, yeah, that's a caribou. I was able to hunt in Alaska. So I didn't really, when I sat up, I guess I should have thought more about the angle of it. I could have probably made him look bigger, but
it looks pretty big from where I'm sitting.
Yeah,
I'm teaching my son how to take pictures of fish. You hold your hand way out and then
that's correct. Bigger. And people are like, man, that fish is huge, and that guy's hands are even huger. It's weird.
It'd be a lot bigger if my arms were longer.
Right, exactly.
Tell us about where this love for music and hunting and fishing came from, Geoff.
Oh, wow. It's an interesting brew, guys, and I appreciate you not only asking me to be a part of this, but doing this kind of work. I feel like get on my soapbox for 1 second here. I just feel like the faith community has given up a lot of things and given a lot of ground away to a lot of things. And one of those is the outdoors. And I feel like a lot of people in the faith community love the outdoors and spend a lot of time hunting and fishing in the outdoors. But even maybe like me during my music career, didn't talk publicly a lot about it. And I just think it's such an integral piece of our faith journey, being connected to our Creator through His creation. And so that really bore itself out in my life. I grew up in a very non-traditional music world, but in a very with a family and a dad that was an avid outdoorsman. And so I was kind of the 20th anniversary present to my parents, and so I was the caboose of our family. And my dad was not a Christian when he and my mom were married, but became Christians right before I was born. And And man, my dad just he loved the outdoors. And so anybody out there listening who's a parent, there's a blessing when you have a shared interest with one of your children. And I just makes it easier to get along and have something to talk about. And so that's the way it was with my dad and I. So we spent a lot of time outside, and I never felt like he and I had a ton in common in other areas. He was quite a bit older than me. He worked a lot in a family business that he owned. But man, that one piece, I think, in the way that flowed into our faith, because he was able to really communicate a lot of the things he felt about God using outdoor imagery, that and sports imagery, particularly as related to disciplining me and my brothers. So it's fourth and long, boys. You better get it straight. Whatever his corny analogy would be. And but you take this, but it was also a very non-musical world, and I think to my parents, like art felt sort of frivolous, and they had to work hard. They were children that came out of the Depression, and I think they felt like art was a luxury that they personally couldn't really afford. So there was very little music in my house, very little art hanging on the walls. I mean, as my parents got older, they did open up more to listening to music, and but what I didn't know was that God was like, he was letting me live out these experiences and stories, and letting me know interesting people, and things that would all become sort of the DNA of the songs that I would later write.
Cool. Yeah, art was not a practical thing for them, huh?
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't put food on the table.
Right. So when my dad passed away before I started my recording career, which was, it's always been kind of an odd thing to me of just how God timed that, and I don't know, what's some mystics talk about the thin place, between here and eternity, that I hope that maybe through some of the work I've done with my music, that, my father was in God's great providence aware of it. But my mom lived to see my music career, and, it's good to make your mama proud, So I wrote a lot about the outdoors. I wrote a lot about like early friendships. I feel like there are some common denominators in people's lives, places we can really connect. And I think some of those kinds of experiences are early friendships with kids, the whatever world we grew up in, whatever our neighborhood was. I feel like that was something that I could write about, that people could connect with. And then I didn't really specifically write songs about hunting and fishing, but I wrote songs about the outside and about just the power of connection between the created and the creator, and how that, I believe, just does a ton of things for us, but makes us aware of God's presence, of his power, of his ability to care for us, all of that. So came to Nashville in the mid 1980s, and there must have been a shortage of artists, because I got a deal pretty quick. And I look back on it now, it's like, I don't even know, man, just what God put in place and surrounded me, using one of my dad's athletic analogies. I was the worst guy on the team, but I was on a really, really good team. And
Wow.
it helped buoy me up. And man, I got, for almost 25 years, I got a run to make an album almost every year. And
Wow.
we did about 150 shows a year, played all over the world, and it was just a really amazing season of my life. I played, I don't even know how many thousands of shows I've played. I did the math one time. I think I've got over 2 million miles on a tour bus, and I think I've got about 3 million miles on an airplane. So it's been to a lot of places. And anybody that is old enough that they were listening to music in the 90s and the early 2000s, I mean, that was the golden age of Christian music.
Yeah.
And so when you think about, I mean, the label that I was on, guys, was Rebecca St. James, Audio Adrenaline, us, and DC Talk. That was our label, Forefront
Wow.
Records. And so
I
we got to
remember.
be a part of just this amazing thing, you know, and there were other amazing artists. They were a part of our Forefront family, but that was like the core of us that went all the way through. And so to get to do that and be a part of that was just an amazing time. But man, I worked so much, and you know, I'm raising kids and doing all this stuff. And man, I tell people a lot, because when we get into the Fellowship Adventures, part of our mission is just, you know, helping people that are really torched and burnt out. You know, it's hard when you're in a vocation where every opportunity has some sort of redemptive quality to it,
Mm.
right? And so you have to say no to good things, which is hard for people that often are performance driven. And so one of the ways God used that is he helped me reconnect with the outdoors. And I had stopped doing much hunting and fishing. I'd stopped, you know, being outside, and I just became more intentional about it. And it was really through that was the beginning DNA, as it reconnected my love of the outdoors. Now with this sort of framework of a career, a music career, and just the giant amount of relationships that had put it into my life.
Yeah.
Was really how things started.
Was there a particular trip or something that maybe was that catalyst that you remember, you look back on, that you looked around and you go, what, why have I not been doing this?
Yeah, for sure, man. You know, I was playing a show in South Dakota. It was at a Christian college in Mitchell, South Dakota, called Dakota Wesleyan University. And I was sitting at lunch, and the chaplain of the university, a guy named Kermit Culver, still my friend today. This had been, gosh, early 90s. Kermit came up and said, "Hey, man, I read in this magazine article that you love to hunt and fish." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Have you ever pheasant hunted?" And I was like, "No, but I would love to." And he said, we can do that. And I was like, "Well, man, we got to get on the books like a year in advance." He goes, "No, man, I'm talking about right now. What time is sound check?" And I was
What
like,
time is sound check?
I was like, I don't know, you know, I probably made some stupid joke like, you know, whenever I want it to be, or whatever it was. But dude, I mean, guys, we went out, we got in the university van, and and dude, I'd killed my first limit of pheasants before sound check that day. And man,
Oh my gosh.
it was like outdoor, you know, whatever, cocaine, man. It was like, I love everything about this. And like the next day or two, we went, I must have had another day off, because we circled the bus back through, and I went and had dinner, or like a lunch, with his family on their old family farm. All of his relatives were there. We shot clays out of some crappy clay thrower. These guys just shot the lights out. And then like me and his uncle and grandfather and dad, we all went hunting, and it was super windy, and these guys were making all these crazy shots, and in God's providence, a rooster flushed like right in front of me. On my fourth shot, I rolled him, and it was like, but man, I just loved everything about that. And so I love the family, the community, the place, the ground, the whole tradition. I just loved it all. I was walking through this corn that was over my head, and I hear all this shooting in the distance. And I finally pop out the end, and there's like his great grandfather, his great uncles. They're all sitting in like the old school woven lawn chairs. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
The
yeah.
aluminum frames.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And they're just sitting there, and they're just shooting the lights out, and there's like dead pheasant all around them. And I was like, this is just amazing. You know, I just love the community of it. So the next year, I went to my booking agent. I was like, "Here are the pheasant seasons. It's October to November right here. Any offer I get within 500 miles of South Dakota, take it." You know, and so we would take days off. I became friends with a farmer out there, and a young guy, and he invited me to come hunting, and so I went, and he allowed me to invite a few friends, and so I invited some buddies from Nashville, and we were sitting around the fire one of the first nights, and we were just talking and hanging out. And keep in mind, now I'm playing like a lot of music and doing a lot. I'm in the thick of it. And if I could put into words, guys, I just felt like the Lord said, if I felt like he just said, pay attention to this, what's happening right here.
Hmm.
I didn't really know that meant for more, but it did. Yeah. So that was the beginning. And gosh, I've sat around, 1,000 fires since that night with guys. So that was really the kind of impetus of what became Fellowship Adventures.
We talk a lot about the power of sitting around a fire, and it's just something Brad references it as caveman TV. And
Right. That's good. Yeah.
but what is it, man, about a fire that gets guys more reflective in nature?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. People ask me what we call Fellowship Adventures FA, because we got to shorten everything in the world. So um the people say, what's it about? And I often tell them it's about a fire and a table, that hopefully there's a lot of great game hunted and a lot of fish caught, but that's really what it distills down to. Because I feel the same sense sitting around a table,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I think that for a fire particularly, I think the fact that there's something that you can tend, because there's two kinds of people, boys, right? There's stokers and there's non-stokers, And so I always see the stokers. They sit there and they get up and they get another stick and they get the rod and they start moving the wood around and all of that. And I think the fact that that it's like active and alive, and I do agree there's something to stare at, and but it's kind of spellbinding, isn't it? It's almost in some ways like great instrumental music. You can't really explain why you like it, but somehow it moves you. And and I just think a lot of it has to do with you're rarely, distracted. You're often sitting in a circle. You can often see other people. I think there's a lot of and we try and build our fires in beautiful places, and that's often helps, really kind of set the mood as well.
Yeah. So if you're sitting around a fire, what's one of your favorite hunting stories that you like to tell? Some experience that you had. You're like, this is my hunting story. This is the experience that I had, and this is what I learned from it. And you're around the fire.
Oh, that's a great question. The Let's see. Sometimes we have great conversations where, like, if we have like a counselor, a psychiatrist come, and he's like, I'm not gonna name any names, but here's like we had like an emergency room doctor that came. It's like every year he gave like his top 5 craziest things that he saw. So, a lot of just goofy stuff like that and goofy grown up stuff. And but I don't know, there's probably 2. I've been really blessed to get to do a lot of stuff, and there's 2 that are kind of my extreme ends. One would be, since we can see that caribou, one was I was able to shoot him in the Taylor Mountains in bush country of Alaska, and we went in by plane. Super Cub picked us up. I don't know if anybody's done any of that kind of hunting, but they have these big Tundra tires, so they can land on the mushy ground. And
Seen them on, like, I watched that show Meat Eater, the Meat Eater show with Stephen Amell, and I've seen those guys use those
it'd be
kind
like
of
that.
bush planes.
And dude, it's like, they have like a stall speed of 25 knots. They're amazing planes, and but you got to get to a flat place where they can land. And so it was me and a buddy, and we were in this big valley, and we had watched these caribou come through, and we'd watched a big sow grizzly and her cubs were in the same valley. In fact, the morning that I shot him, we were hiking out. We got it before dawn out of our tent. We were hiking about a mile to get to a place where we could glass. And there's an upland bird in Alaska called a ptarmigan, and it starts with a P, if you know. And dude, we stepped around this rock curve. It was right at the crack of dawn. All I'm thinking about is, this giant grizzly bear that I'm sure is just waiting right around that corner to eat me. And I should be like praising God and singing, singing worship songs, but I was like, don't even. And I stepped around and these ptarmigan went everywhere. They flushed right all around us. And that was probably as freaked out as I've been in the outdoors. But anyway, we were able to work it out and got him. And
don't walk with your hand on the trigger.
That's correct. That's correct. So harvested him and made a long, but man, it was about a mile hike from where we shot him until where the airplane could get him. And it took a bunch of trips. That's the most exhausted I can remember ever being in my life. And
you guys are cleaning that thing out there and packing the meat.
Yeah. And then
all the while thinking about that bear the whole time.
So like one guy would stand and we saw her. It wasn't crazy, but she was around. And one of us would take turns and, then we put them on backpacks and their thing. And that ground it's literally like walking on a sandy beach. It's so mushy. But anyway, got to the bridge and the airplane came in and could only take one of us at a time. So I took my buddy out first, and then some weather came in. And so I sat up on this like mountain ridge. I was probably there 4 or 5 hours by myself before the weather cleared out and they could come back and get me. And, I'm literally covered. There's no water, there's no creek or anything. I'm like covered in caribou blood. And I got like, these bags of caribou meat sitting around me. And I can see the grizz out on the horizon kind of doing the thing.
Good night.
And, it was just those hours it was just kind of an amazing time where I kind of went from sort of afraid to, excited. It would kind of ebb and flow how your emotions would go, and I didn't have a satellite phone or anything. So I was really genuinely isolated for just those few hours, but it felt, but man, by the time that was over, I felt a connection with the world around me. I felt a connection with the Lord that it's one of those things, man, if I could recapture that, I would, because it was a really powerful time for me. Mm. Just another story I love that I would tell around the fire would be when I was growing up. I grew up in southern Michigan, and Michigan is like a sportsman's paradise, and you have all the Great Lakes and all these rivers. It's a play, yeah. So my dad and I were fishing. We were trout fishing together on like I think it was the Crystal River. That would be the northern lower peninsula. And if you want to think I made it up, you can, but we had caught a few fish and it was a great day. And I was about 12 and we came around this corner and there was like a dead bend in the river, where a lot of debris had piled up. And there was a huge rainbow. Man, I'm saying like, I don't know, 25, 28-inch rainbow. And
it's just what I think.
He had his head up, it was in current, and he had his head up under the debris that had piled up in this corner. And my dad went over and he said, "Come here, son." So we real easily walked up to him. And my dad took like some brush, and he started touching the back of the fish with this brush, just like debris would flow past him on the river. And he looked at me and he was like, and my dad wasn't like Mr. Teachable moment guy, but in this moment, he was like, son, he goes, if you hide or stick your hand in the sand or pretend like you don't want to know what's going on around you, trouble will find you. I remember him saying that. And then he put the branch down and he touched the back of that fish with his hand. And God is my witness, fellas, he stuck his fingers up in the gill of that rainbow and threw him up on the shore. And I was like, you are the greatest outdoorsman of all time. I couldn't believe it. But like, I still remember this and he was talking the whole time that he was doing it. And it was just like, so yeah, I don't know, man, when I think about all kinds of crazy stuff, like when I think about, trying to make good decisions or ignoring what's going on around me or ignoring good counsel or hiding from stuff or trying to be secretive, all that stuff. Isn't that crazy? It all comes back to that river in Michigan, man.
Wow. I love that.
That's incredible.
What was his line one more time? Give it to us one more time.
Oh, when he would talk, he just said, anytime that you try and hide or anytime you try and stick your head in the sand and pretend that everything is okay around you, trouble will sneak up on you, or trouble will find you. I think he said
That's
trouble
good.
will find you. Yeah.
That's good.
Wow, that's great. Geoff, yeah, I got to say, man, some of the songs that you've written, shifting gears from the outdoors a little bit to music. We'll come
Yeah.
back a little bit more to the outdoors, but I just, some of your songs have made such an impact in my life.
Thank you.
Man, I don't know how many times I've listened to your heart, listen to our hearts.
Yeah.
But I know I had it on repeat for a few years. And so, I mean, it is one of those songs that just, man, it just spoke to me. And that is one of my favorite songs of all time in the Christian genre. And so just want to thank you for letting the Lord use you and through music, and also, what you're doing now with you being an advocate for for people who are going through burnout and partnering with other organizations. I think my wife and I have been a part of Show Hope for about 15 years. We've been donating monthly to that organization. We love what they're doing there, and Compassion International. I know Brad has got a really good connection with them. So yeah, but just man, getting that creativity out into the world, and letting it touch people. Is there a song that you've written that has spoken to you that you feel like, man, this is really the Lord working through me?
Well, thanks for your kind words, Brian. Yeah, I think the great thing is, you write these songs in private, right? And then you let them out in the world. I've always said it's like taking a baby out for the first time, and you're hoping that people think it's adorable and that it doesn't look like a little old man or something, and so there's always that. But when the songs become a part of people's life and a part of their journey, and it really goes beyond what you do, because that's the whole thing about kind of faith journey in anything that smacks of celebrity at all, that anytime you're successful at anything, there'll be some celebrityness attached to it. No, it's not a word, but like whether it's business or music or your church grows big enough or whatever, all of it. And so I think one of the beauties about writing songs is that other people take them over. They take over what they mean to themselves, and so I've loved that part of songwriting. And I would say, List to Our Hearts is definitely one of those songs. Stephen Curtis Chapman and I wrote that. We sang it together a week ago. I mean, we've sung it a lot of times, and I've sung it all over the world. I had a guy that was in Qatar, in the Middle East.
Wow.
And this is expat church, with all these people that work in the oil and gas business live there. And this guy came up. He was a French guy. I cannot do a French accent, but he was like, "Hey, he goes, he said, I love that. I love the song that you sang, Listen to Our Hearts." He goes, "It's one of my favorites." He goes, whoever translated it into English did a fantastic job." And I was like, "Well, thank you." He goes, "But I think it was written in English." And he goes, "Oh no, my friend, it was written in French." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And just kind of walked on. It was like, all right, not worth it. But so that's a song that's gone to a lot of places, and
that's got to be an ultimate. Like, if we dig a little into the psychology of songwriting, that's a pretty significant compliment.
Right.
You wrote that in English, and it was so good that this guy thought, "Man, this was a French song."
Yeah, crazy. So, and I've had some of my music's become kind of a part of people's weddings and funerals and graduations. And if you went to a youth retreat in the 90s, one of my songs might have been a song like Home Run, or Friend Like You might have been a song. It might have been the theme of your camp or your retreat or something, and so that was
vivid
always
memories of those, brother.
Right. So that was all super cool when that kind of stuff got to happen. Or if somebody says when you get married, you pick a song if a song that I was, I wrote down on the back of a McDonald's bag, to remember the words or whatever, and God uses that in that way. That's all super humbling. And I mean, there's a lot of talk around. Did you know it's going to be a great song, or did you know it'd be a power? Or do you know? The answer is always no, always no, because the truth is, here's behind the music, is you think every song's great. Or you wouldn't put them on your album. It's not like, this one's crappy, but what the heck? I need one more.
Put it at
it's
number
like,
7.
Right. That's right. Every song you put on, you think is going to be great, And so it's like, but then when something gets some traction and becomes a part of people's lives, you never expected that to happen. And I remember we had played, some people listening will know this funny baseball song I wrote called Home Run, and I talked about growing up, right? It uses baseball as an analogy for life and faith, and so we had done a home run tour, and we played it like baseball stadiums would do faith nights, and so we played it and played after the games, and as you can imagine, it was awesome. And but we had just gotten tired of playing it. And so we put a new tour together, and it was the next album, and we were like going out, and we're just like, you know what, we're going to just give it a break. We played it for like 4 years every night. We're going to give it a break. And so we open the tour, and we go to this meet and greet, and after the show to, talk to people. And there is a little league baseball team in their uniforms that are in the meet and greet. And I'm like, awesome, they came to your home run, and we just decided not to play it,
Oh,
and so
no.
I was like, so I go to my guitar players, I'm like, dude, go get your acoustic guitars. So they ran back, and they got their guitars and came in, and we gathered the little dudes around, and we played a version of Home Run. So hopefully they thought it was even
much
better that way. But just a reminder that, man, it's not, I think sometimes artists forget how they got to where they are, and it's because of people's generosity and willingness to let your music into their lives. And so I think being keenly aware of that, and man, for me, having people, my wife and people in my life that care way more about what kind of Christ follower, husband, dad, friend I am than ever what kind of musician I was. And I think then, man, when you watch those songs get wings and go to places you never thought they would go, I didn't feel like I could take any credit for it. It just felt like a blessing to me that God would do it that way.
You said something that I was curious about. You just now, you said something like what kind of music I was. What part of music, or what part of does music play in your life now?
Yeah, great question. Will be when I record, so I recorded for a company called EMI for a long time, a couple of decades. And back in those days, so this is like pre-digital music, right? So that was the beauty, man. You wanted one of my songs, it cost you like $15. So because it was cut 7 and you wanted cut 7, whatever.
Amazing.
Or you wanted cut 1 and you had to get cut 7. It went with it. It was a package deal.
Package deal.
And I mean, it's just there's a lot of analogies between professional sports and professional music, because you're under contract, you work for a big company, you have accountability and things that you have to do and have to fulfill. And so, my deals were every 12 to 18 months, I had to deliver a completely new original album. And so, man, when I say hard work, guys, I always want to frame it to, I mean, we're not out digging ditches. I mean, there's plenty of people in this world that are doing harder work every day of their life than I ever did. But that being said, it is a lot. I mean,
there's a mental strain that's pretty heavy.
When you're a songwriter and you're trying to create all that stuff, and you're trying to do it at a professional level, and it's a slow, laborious, beautiful, terrible, amazing, hard process. And so And so I did that for a long time. And when I finished my deal with Forefront, I made 3 more records that were, a couple were with them. One was with a label called Rocket Town. They were like 3 or 4 years in between. And so, and that I enjoyed more. And from a touring standpoint, the music business is a whole nother podcast, but the music business has changed so dramatically. It's not, you can't even do the kind of work that we did back in the day. The market can't sustain it. There's not the level of support that was there for Christian music touring. And so it's a past experience from what it was. But I really just, there was kind of 3 steps. I retired the distance. I started playing as a solo artist. I went from 150 shows to about 80 shows a year. And then slowly I've done less and less of that and more of the Fellowship Adventure stuff. So, I mean, we did, but it's still a lot. I mean, I think pre-COVID, and this year I'll do 30 or 40 things. That'll be all kinds of, I was just at Cottage Hill a few months ago down in you guys' neck of the woods. Chris Bell's a great buddy of mine at 3 Circle, sang there. So I'll go and do that. And to tie to some of these ministry relationships, both of those were in conjunction with Compassion International. So I'll go in, sing some songs and talk about my involvement with their ministry. And then now, we do about 50 trips a year with groups with Fellowship Adventures, and a bunch of those guys are pastors, and so there's a connection to those churches a lot, and so that's really the bulk of what I do, and then play at a bunch of different benefit stuff. So it's really sweet. I get to do enough music to scratch that itch and feel like I'm fulfilling my calling in it without having to grind it out on the road on tour.
Still writing like new music, or writing things you want to write versus what you feel like you have to write?
Yeah, I've never been a very prolific writer, but when my idea book gets thick enough, I'll sit down and get at it, and I'm just about due to do that. So there's a lot of writers that get up every day and write, and I'm not that. I've never been that kind of guy, but I do have a pretty good collection of ideas that I want to start working on. So yeah, hopefully. Cool. I said in 21, but maybe 22. See how it goes.
I know that was a early part of my life, but we traveled and I went to University of Mobile, the little Baptist college here. Yeah. And then we traveled around and led worship for tons of events all over. And so I got a little taste of that. We certainly never achieved any success on the level of like a billboard or anything like that. But we had a lot of fun, and we recorded a couple of projects that we were really proud of. And then, we weren't able to pay bills, and we started to have children. We started to have children, and we're like, well, we got to do something different. And so, man, whenever that happened, and I just started leading for my church. That's what I do. I'm a worship pastor and missions pastor for my church here in Mobile. And that's how I know Josh. Well, I've known Josh since college. We went to college together. But that's how I met Dr. Stafford. They took us out to the refuge out in Wyoming on one of the pastor's trips. It worked out. We went out there and went fly fishing in Wyoming. And that's where I met Wes. And that's how I was on that trip, because I do missions for my church. But like as a songwriter, and I felt like I want to take that hat off because that didn't work. And so I just struggled to get like a mojo back into writing songs, that feels like just such another part of a whole nother life ago,
Right.
And so it's really tough to get that back, I think then I was probably trying to write stuff because I wanted to make a living doing it. And so I was trying to write songs that I thought people would like versus just writing songs that are good songs that really speak to me. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's definitely, songwriting is a craft for sure. And like all crafts, you got to practice it to stay good at it. I love to play golf, and I played in this tournament the other day, and I hadn't picked up a club in like 8 months. And I was like, that was embarrassing. And so, it's like, because I used to be able to play it pretty well. So it's like a deal where you gotta stay at it, right? And so, and I don't know that that's all just writing songs, but just listening to music, or paying attention to what's kind of going on in the art world around you. I think it's the same thing for whatever we're involved in. I will say, man, it's just an encouragement. I spend a lot of time with worship leaders. We do a lot of worship leaders come on trips, and I guess worship lead in a lot of churches through the year. And um, I just, I think the great worship songs are local, and they're local. And sometimes they become national and international, but they all start out local. And what I mean by that is you're sitting under the teaching of your pastor or your teaching team, whatever your church looks like, and you're ingesting, digesting, and then letting that influence the songs that you write. And I think that's the important thing. I think the important thing is if you're a worship leader and you're trying to write music, write for the people that are in front of you, write for the people in the church community that you're in. And then maybe there's other church communities like it that will connect with it, but maybe not. It doesn't really matter, I mean, I think that this idea of I'm trying to write songs that the whole world will sing is I think that's distracting, because God's given you a very unique perspective to sit under teaching of a fellowship that you're involved in, that God's leading. And I think if you write songs out of that, it's going to serve your community. And if the community gets bigger than that one, great. And if not, don't worry about it. I think that idea of kind of grinding it is not the way. I mean, a deadline helps us sometimes. I agree. It's good to know that you got to have something done at a certain time. But my experience generally has been that any kind of outside pressure or deadline does not really promote creativity. And so I think it's better just to let it naturally come out of you.
Good. Tell us a little bit about your, where did this advocacy for like compassion and show hope, where would that begin for you? And I know that's something you continue.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Wes Stafford. Wes is one of my very dear friends. I've called him one of my mentors to his face plenty of times, and he hasn't, yelled at me, so I can keep saying that. Our ministry that I'm get to be a part of, Fellowship Adventures, Wes is on our board, and so he walks really, really closely with me. He and I have hunted and fished a ton together around the country, and have had the pleasure to travel a great deal with him in his capacity with compassion. My dad grew up in rural poverty, was poor, got out of it, did really well, was embarrassed of the way that he grew up. And one of the things he tried to do is shield us, his children, from poverty. He was embarrassed of it. And as a young Christian, I don't think he was able to really understand the role of poverty in the life of believers. And so it didn't see much. And one of the first big tours I did, guys, was opening for a band called Petra. Do you guys remember Petra?
Yeah.
And so awesome, right? And they were like the biggest Christian rock band in the world, so getting to open for them was this awesome deal. And a guy that worked for them was a manager. He left and he went to work for Compassion. And he had never he invited me on a trip. It's probably, I don't know, you can edit all this stuff out, but he had lunch with me one day. I just signed my first record deal. I just finished my first album. And he's like, Geoff, what are you going to do with your platform? And I was like, dude, I don't have a platform. If I do get a platform, it'd be kind of awesome to feed my family. That's sort of what I'm going to your point, right? And he goes, dude, but just in case, and he said, I work for this organization called Compassion International, and I'd never heard of them. And he said, I'd like to take you to Haiti. And so as a result of kind of my dad's worldview, I'd never been on a missions trip. I'd never been outside of the country. I think we went to like a Caribbean resort one time, but we never got outside the walls, And so I went to Haiti, and that was really a big life-changing experience for me. Really tore down a lot of the construct of my sort of traditional faith that I had built without a lot of assistance from God's oversight, and the Lord and compassion helped reconstruct a worldview that helped me understand the role that the poor play in it. And what I mean by that is our responsibility to love and care for the poor, and the poor's ability to deeply impact and change our lives, and to see a unique vision of who Jesus is and what he cares about through them. And so I went all in with compassion, and I think I've been on 75 trips with them. Been every corner of the world they work in. Through, if you saw me do a show all through the 90s and the early 2000s, you would have heard me probably talk about my love for compassion. And even today in our outdoor ministry fellowship adventures, we host a bunch of trips that in the context of that trip, we try and share about the work that compassion does. I believe that this is like the worst analogy you'll have ever had on any one of your podcasts, but here it goes anyway. Sponsoring a child with compassion is like a gateway drug to missions. I'm going to say it that way. So, because it literally opens you up for a very little financial investment to see what God can do. And I've just watched it in thousands of churches, hundreds of churches I personally have been in, that have watched them kind of crack the door in missions with compassion sponsorship, and then watch their church become a real place where a generosity movement took over. And so I love the work of compassion. I love the fact that they're Christ-centric. I love the fact that they work exclusively through the local church. I love that they deal almost exclusively with Indigenous people that work in their offices. It just checks a lot of boxes for the things that I believe are critical to doing international mission work well. And I'll never repay them for what they've done for me and shown me, and on a regular basis kind of, slapped me around and reminded me of the way the world really is, and to stop griping about how my air conditioning isn't cold enough. So leave it at that. And Show Hope, for those that don't know it, is an adoption advocacy and adoption grant ministry and foster care ministry that Stephen Curtis and Mary Beth Chapman started. Stephen and Mary Beth are my wife Jan and I's lifelong best adult friends. We've been over 30 years. We've been best pals, and all of your favorite Stephen Curtis songs, I wrote pretty much all those. So you can you're welcome. And so he was kind enough to bring me in and let me write a second verse or a bridge on, The Great Adventure and Speechless and a bunch of other of his amazing songs. And he and I we just have lived our lives together, and they came and told us they were thinking about adopting a little girl from China. I was the one friend that loved them enough to tell them that's probably not a good idea. Your life's too crazy already. So they ignored me and did it anyway. And then that started something churning in my wife's heart. And she came and asked me to pray about adoption. And I did. And God's honest truth, I prayed that God would just, kind of wake my wife up and bring her back to reality, because we were like a few years from empty nest. We had 2 sons, and man, I had like a bass boat on me. It was gonna be awesome. And God changed the direction of our lives. We went in 2000 and adopted Anna, and then 2 years later, Stephen and Mary Beth and Jan and I went back to China together. They adopted their daughter Stevie Joy, and we adopted our daughter Ashley. They were in cribs next to each other. Wow. And they're still best friends. We're going to spend Easter Sunday together, and now they're 19. So all that to say is that adoption was a very unexpected thing that reached into my and Jan's life. And people say it all the time. I think sometimes we have a tendency to back away from something that's said a lot because we feel like it's not fresh and original, which is kind of stupid, because I think that truth is truth. So, adoption looks like the gospel, right? It is a literal metaphor of the gospel. And so it dramatically impacted my life, redefined what family looks like, redefined the way that I believe, helped me understand how God created us to love each other.
Good.
And so and Show Hope's just one of those ministries that we were there at their very beginning. I was one of their founding board members, and just to watch it do the work that it's done, gosh, I don't even know, they got to be approaching 10,000 adoption grants. They do all this aftercare, because adoption's awesome. When you get the baby, everybody's there with balloons and yeehaws, and then when the kid decides they want to try and set the backyard on fire, nobody's around to say hello or help you out. And so they do a ton of aftercare and just really remarkable stuff. And I would just tell you, man, they don't, the Chapmans don't, it's not a hobby for them or photo op. It's something that they have deeply invested their lives in. So, and really, I just think I think this really thinking about serving other people, guys, it is so critical to, I believe, health and not to try and circle us back to the outdoors, but I'll circle it to the outdoors. To
bring it back, man.
I mean, one of the things I love, and I know that you guys do too, is that when you're outside, I see this like amazing blend that reminds me so much of life. There's order, and there's beauty, and there's tragedy and violence, but over it all is this sense that we get to be in a place that we cannot control, but we get to be present in it. And if we use the skills and the wisdom that God's given us, for the most part, we can safely traverse our way through it. But you have to approach the outdoors with humility, because it will hurt you if you don't. And then if you do that and you got the right gear, you can have this amazing experience. And to me, that reminds me so much of like just the way that we walk through life, right? It takes courage, and it takes humility, and it takes a sense of adventure and a willingness to kind of see unknown things. And so, really not, as much as I like to tie the bow up in the third verse and make it really awesome before we go into the final chorus, it is that way. Even the work that we do through Fellowship Adventures, that work is that way. It allows us to see God's great beauty and handiwork, but at the same time realizing that we serve I watch a lot of, Vikings crap, right? We serve at the pleasure of the king. We do, and so I want to keep that in mind, and the outdoors really helps me stay connected to that.
In Fellowship Adventures, you guys are kind of leading pastors back to that place, right? And helping remind them of those truths, huh?
Yeah. I think it snuck up on me a little bit, man. I started just taking some buddies on trips. I have a lot of friends that are pastors, and you guys know, you know firsthand, it's a hard job, and it's isolating and lonely, and you're held to a ridiculous standard. And I was in a small group a few years ago. It was two pastors and their wives and two Christian counselors and their wives, and my wife and I. It's like, these are some of the loneliest people I have ever met. I mean, they got like nobody to talk to. I mean, it's silly, but who does a Christian counselor talk to when their marriage is struggling? It's tough, right? Because it's bad for business, and at the core of a lot of this stuff, it's people's jobs. I think we forget when we talk about what we don't like about a guy in ministry or what a screwball they are or whatever. We forget that it's like their livelihood. It's the thing that how they pay for their house and take care of their children, and all the things that vocation represents to us. So it's their vocation on top of them trying to shepherd people. And so as I became aware of that, and I came out of a small local church. I've always just had a super deep love for the local church. Who was it that talked about the local church being God's plan A? Was it Rick Warren? Probably. Good job, Rick. If it wasn't, I'm going to give you credit for this one. And I believe that. I believe that the local church is God's plan to reach the world with the gospel. And so if I can do some stuff to help in a small way, contribute to the health of the local church by caring for its leaders, I want to do that. And oddly enough, being a professional musician and doing what I've done all these years gives me a kind of innate understanding of what it's like to be in a leadership position in a church. I didn't expect it to understand it, but there's just a lot of commonality. And not forget the money, because the economies are so different, but church leaders, professional musicians, professional athletes have a ton in common. You're rewarded for things that you were kind of naturally given. You are loved by people that don't know you, and those are odd things. Most people don't encounter those, and so there's a little bit of a fraternity that we have, and God's just created an opportunity for us to be able to, love on folks in ministry and encourage them. And I'm not here to say that a hunting or fishing trip is going to change somebody's life by itself, but I have seen it over and over again that as a greater part of an intentionality on the by somebody in ministry, they've been really impactful. Sometimes just to wake them up to what they need, or that they have been a long time before that, since they've been really vulnerable and transparent. And so, yeah, man, I wouldn't have ever been able to make it up, dude. We have these giant houseboats up in Canada that we take guys fishing on. They're 80 feet long. We come in a float plane. We have fishing boats. It's just this iconic thing. And me and a buddy dreamed it up and drew it on a napkin. And then once in a while you get to do that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. So the Lord's opened some really remarkable doors for us. And in some ways, I'll sit around a fire with 10 or 12 guys, and for so many years I used to stand on the stage and in front of a lot of people, and I couldn't even see them, right, because the lights were in my eyes. But but now I'll sit around a fire with just a few guys, but they represent so many people's lives that they touch. And I'm really thankful that God helped me kind of figure this thing out. And it's been a super blessing to my life.
Geoff, sorry, this conversation, man, it has been such a breath of fresh air and just a fun thing to do. When we close all of our conversations with guests, we like to ask, what's your next adventure? So what is that? What's on the horizon for you?
Let's see. This is how crazy my life is, right? So we'll go. I'm playing golf on Thursday, and Chris Tomlin and his wife Lauren have an amazing foundation called For Others.
I went to college with Lauren.
Oh, awesome, man.
Yeah.
So we're doing that golf on Thursday. And then, Chris does a big Good Friday service here in Nashville at the arena. And then that's on Friday. And then we'll have Easter. Then Monday morning, I'll fly we call it the Fellowship Ranch. It's our ranch in Nebraska. And we'll host a month of turkey hunts there. So we got a bunch I think we got like 15 or 18 different ministry guys, and then just some guys that are supporters of ours coming in. And we'll hunt turkeys in the river hills there in northern Nebraska. And then we have like 2 of those weekends we'll finish hunting on Friday, and I'll fly to a couple different places and play concerts in churches over the weekend, and then go back, with probably turkey blood under my fingernails, but nobody will know that. It's going to be awesome. And then we have a couple week break, and then we head up and we do our fishing season all through the summer. And so I'm kind of in and out of my home in Franklin during that time. So it's kind of a crazy life. I get to wear a lot of different hats, and sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, but for me, and there'll be a lot of guys my age will relate to this, man. I'm trying to be present in the moments that I'm in, right? It's so easy to be thinking about the next opportunity. And I really do that when we have a lot of groups come in for our fellowship adventure stuff. it's just easy to start thinking about, man, the next group or this is going to happen or whatever. And God's just, he's helping me be present, something I encourage all of us to do, because who knows if that next opportunity will even show up, right? So let's enjoy the ones we have.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, man. Brian and I are both we both have a deep passion for fly fishing, and so awesome. Your trout story was that'll stick with me for a while. I love that.
Good. My son Justin. Be careful you take your kids on vacation. He's a professional fly fisherman just outside of Aspen, Colorado.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Works and guides out there. He's the classic dude, you know, beard, foam core, $10,000 worth of gear kind of dude, you know. So yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
That's one thing I love about fly fishing. You can catch them with a crappy rod too, though. So
you can. Yeah.
You don't look as cool, but you can do it.
I mean, don't you think it's just fly fishing to me is like it's what bow hunting is to hunting, fly fishing is to fishing, right? It takes practice, Absolutely. It takes patience. It's pretty solitary. It's super rewarding. Everything you get is super rewarding. Yeah, I love it. I'm not great at it. My son is a terrible teacher, although he teaches people every day. But when his dad is standing next to him, I'm like, dude, I tell you how to tie your shoes. You can teach me how to roll cast. I'm begging you. So yeah, it's funny.
Awesome. Well, man, this has been such a great conversation, man. We'll be sure to we'll be sure to link all the things, compassion and show hope. You know,
awesome,
and
man.
Maybe some people connect there,
and fellowship adventures too,
and fellowship adventures, awesome. Man. There may be some guys that are listening that, who knows who's listening that maybe needs an opportunity to go shoot
you can reach out to us, man. We will love to hear from you.
Yeah, we're this episode will be for the fall season.
Yeah.
Currently, we're finishing up this fourth season, and the last episode will be Dr. Stafford.
Awesome.
He joined us and shared some of his incredible stories, and just what an incredible guy.
Yeah, he's amazing, man. Yeah, and I love that guy. And you know, Ed's been. I know Ed was on one of your shows. Ed's been on a couple of trips with us. Love that dude. And yeah, you guys are in a sweet spot down there. A lot of wonderful people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, we'll link everything and share everything on the website.
Great, guys. I know you wanted some pictures and some stuff. I've got a gal that works with me that I'll have her figure some of that out and send it to you. All right.
That'd be awesome. We'd love to see some of that, man. We always say this is our thing. We hope these stories encourage people, right? And we also hope and encourage people to write their stories. That's something that we're passionate about, is not just telling stories around the campfire, but hopefully writing these things down for the people that come behind us. And that's kind of our hope for this podcast, is that people will hear these stories. And this is like a digital campfire that we get to tell stories and share life. And so we're thankful for you taking time to spend with us and share these stories and conversations. And we hope they encourage people to do that, to share their own stories and have their own adventures in what we call the storied outdoors.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. We hope these stories encourage you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in the storied outdoors.
Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growly Leather. So visit growlyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors.